Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Security Squawk podcast, where we talk about the business of cybersecurity. I am here today is May 24th, 2021, and I have with me my cohort, Reginald Andre from Arc Solvers in Miami, Florida. How are you, sir?
Doing good, doing good.
All right. Thanks for joining me again today on the show and knocking out episode number, I think we're at 22 now today.
22, yeah.
All right, awesome. So, real quick, give us everybody an update. I'm going to jump over to Facebook here and just share out our podcast recording to my audience. But we didn't get to do our live one last week. We were in Austin, Texas together, and we didn't get to do that. Like we thought. We were just super busy, right? We were at a conference, and I think that anybody who's in business and goes to conferences specifically to work on their business, you know that they're pretty jam-packed from start to finish. At least the good ones are, right?
Right.
And we thought we could sneak away, but it would have been like while we were eating lunch, and it was tough to get a quiet area where we thought we could get decent audio recordings done. So we just decided to record it today on Monday, and we will do our regular Thursday recording as well this week to make up for what we didn't do last week. So I guess why don't we talk about takeaways from our event? Did you pick up on anything at the event related to cybersecurity that you weren't necessarily aware of when we spoke?
Actually, yes, but I also want to mention since we do have a business audience, it's called the get out of bed number.
Okay.
I think that was important for everyone to just know and have. And essentially, it's like, what number do you need to make a day for a project, for a contract, where whenever you do get out of bed, the dollar amount is worth it. So, for example, your get out of bed number can be $500 in order to do a proposal. So just always kind of like have that number in back of your head, because sometimes you find yourself doing work that's not even worth it. So just have that get out of bed number.
Yeah, that's always an important thing for small businesses to kind of figure out, in my opinion, because a lot of businesses, and I don't think there's very many industries that are immune to this, and especially with technology today, being the great equalizer, in my opinion, and technology, in my opinion, is something that's deflationary from an economic standpoint, in that technology usually makes things cheaper to do, but technology also can commoditize industries very quickly, right? And I see that in a lot of different industries. And so how, if you were somebody that you were given this advice to that you just mentioned, Andre, what are some strategies, or what should some things that people should look at in terms of a minimum amount to charge, or a minimum profitability standard? Because really that's what we're talking about at the end of the day. Like, what is your standard on your profitability? What are some strategies that you could employ as a business owner to really get your head around or understand whether or not you're charging enough in your business?
Yeah, I would definitely look at your cost plus. So everything to run your business, to pay your employees, all the tools that you need for it, and then what margin do you need, or what percentage do you need in order to be able to take home some money and be happy about it, and not have a struggle or whatever the case is. So that's kind of like what one of the spreadsheets that we use in our class was how much do you need to run your business. And then how much do you want to be able to take home to buy that car or the toy or whatever it is that you want to do?
Yeah. And I guess for me, it's one of the biggest mistakes you can make as a business owner in any industry is don't decide what your pricing is based on what your competition is doing or what your market is doing, because that's what you believe where the market is priced, right? I think a lot of people lie to themselves and don't do the proper research and don't do maybe things that are innovative or things differently than other companies, and they try to fit the mold of what they think the clients or prospects in their market will actually pay for what they're doing. And I know in our industry, it's a problem where companies just don't value what they do enough, right? To where they can say, I'm worth this amount of money and I should charge this much. Mm-hmm. It's severely on the low end. And then when you educate a business owner around all the costs that go into how you deliver your service and what you do, they find out pretty quickly that money is gone like that. And they don't charge enough money to do what they do. So, and what we're going to jump into today with ransomware and all the stuff that's going on with that. I mean, geez, you get hit with ransomware and you're not making any money. How are you going to pay the hackers? You know what I mean? Like, people have to actually have like a rainy day fund. And so I'm just being serious about this because as we're going to look at today, we could be looking at the end of days for insurance companies paying the ransom for companies, right? So let's jump into the CNA one right away, right? So I'm going to pull that up on the screen. First topic we're going to discuss, or we're going to kind of dive in a little bit, is this, and I certainly covered this on my YouTube channel, but CNA Insurance or CNA Financial, a very large insurance firm, was hit with ransomware, and they did end up paying the ransom. And I want to kind of talk about this for a couple different reasons that I'm going to bring up with you. But as we can see, the MSSP alert, which Andre and I are a big fan of, the Howard Cass reported today that CNA Financial paid $40 million to ransomware hijackers to unlock its data and restore its network systems. This happened in March of 2021. And it goes on to say the astronomical amount the cyber roughnecks, that's a new one, squeezed from CNA Financials is thought to be the largest ransom demand met by victims to date. For perspective, the CNA heist is roughly 10 times the $4.4 million that hackers who hit Colonial Pipeline raked in from an early May 2021 payment. So let's just stop there. What are your thoughts on the number? As this person points out, it's astronomical. Give me your perspective there first.
Yeah, I think they had no choice. Their backup systems that they had, their restoration systems they had, whatever plan they had did not, well, either they didn't have a plan or the plan that they had did not work. And they were at a situation where it was just that it was cheaper and less painful to just pay and hope that things go back to normal.
So the other piece of this is 4.4 million versus 40 million, right? Mm-hmm. Why would hackers have such a disparity between what Colonial Pipeline paid and what CNA Financial paid, in your opinion? Like, why was it 10 times the amount?
You know what? I don't know, because this, maybe, is it more computers that got hit, maybe?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple things going on here. Even though Colonial Pipeline is as big as it is, they probably don't make as much money. At the office. They probably don't make as much money as CNA, right? Mm-hmm. And then in terms of profitability, how much they have. The other piece of this is in my opinion, is Colonial Pipeline. They were able to like kind of shut down the operations, but as we know now, the operations are the machines that controlled the delivery of the fuel with Colonial weren't really impacted. So they took them down. They took everything offline as a precaution, which was a good move. But at the end of the day, they probably didn't have to take them offline because it was determined that they were not impacted. And that's why they were able to get up as quickly as they were.
Right.
The other piece is the private information that an insurance company holds versus what a pipeline company holds, right? Yeah. So a pipeline, while they have contracts with shipping companies and oil companies and stuff like that, CNA Insurance has private information on individuals. And more than likely, that's what they paid to make sure didn't get out to the dark web and the general public. So my guess is that the quality of the data of the assets that were stolen in CNA's case versus Colonial Pipeline's case was much greater. There was much more value behind that data than what they got with Colonial. Colonial was a nuisance and a disruption to the oil supply chain. CNA, they got to their assets to very valuable information. So it's one thing for a hospital to get hacked and have their operations halted, which is what we're going to talk about in a minute. But it's another thing when you have a hospital that gets exploited and then all of their patient information is now in the hands of a hacker, and they can do a lot of different things with that information. And I think that that's why we see a couple things go on in the ransomware negotiation process. A, what's your revenue? B, what's your typical profitability in that industry? So that gives the hackers an idea of what your cash flow is and how much money you might or might not have on hand. And then the other side of it is how valuable is the data that we just stole off the network? How valuable is that? Like how much do these companies want to keep that protected and not getting released out into the wild? And I think in CNA's case, the data was extremely valuable when we compare it to like a pipeline company.
Right.
So, and it goes on to state that CNA is the 7th largest commercial insurance provider in the world. It coughed up the lofty sum 2 weeks after hackers stole data and locked up its systems. And that's the other part of it too. Like you go 2 weeks into an event and you realize that you don't have many options. And as we know, the longer you wait, the higher the price goes. So that could have absolutely played an impact here as to whether or not these guys get 40 million or 4 million, right? It's, how long did you wait to actually start negotiating and start telling these guys you were going to pay? So, and I guess the other piece is I can't go without saying this is the hacking group behind it, right? So, it really just depends on the hacking group that's behind it and, how willing they are to work with you or not work with you on certain things.
Right.
Rebel, very, very good group.
Clarify good.
What's that?
Clarify good.
Well, they're good in the sense that they're the worst, right? So, I mean, they're very successful and they're one of the top grossing ransomware groups that are out there. So they go on to say no comment about the ransomware payment. Law enforcement was involved, but CNA hasn't formally commented on the attack, let alone the payoff, other than to say it has complied with the law. The insurer has consulted and shared intelligence about the attack and hacker's identity with Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Treasury Department for an asset control. So the government's involved, just like they probably were with the pipeline. And it's not currently clear how the freeze out will reverberate CNA's clients. In a security incident update posted on May 12th, CNA said it did not believe the systems of record claims systems or underwriting systems where the majority of policy holder data is, including policy terms and coverage limits stored, were impacted. So do you believe that based on the number that they paid? Because I mean, I don't.
Yeah, no, I don't either.
I mean, why would you pay that kind of number if they don't believe it? My guess is the words "they don't believe" mean that we don't believe because we haven't seen evidence. But if they didn't have the right technology in place and the right things set up, they're never going to have that evidence.
Yeah.
Right. So until somebody comes forward and says, "Hey, we have this data," I guess that's going to be the story they're sticking to until somebody proves that otherwise, which is very interesting. I've been doing a lot of research lately on various attacks and some things that are coming down the pike with vulnerabilities that I'm aware of that haven't hit the street yet. And as you try to disclose vulnerabilities to vendors and people out there, you're literally met with this, that they like, we don't believe you. And that's the interesting thing. I'm working with a bunch of people who are involved in this kind of stuff. And it amazes me that when you go to a major vendor, and you tell them that we've discovered a vulnerability in your system, and their initial knee-jerk reaction is we don't believe you almost all the time. Like, prove it to us. And then you prove it to them, and then they'll go, oh, well, this has to be true, and that has to be true, and that has to be true, and that has to be true in order for somebody to, successfully exploit what you've found. And like, to me, it's like, that's exactly what hackers do. They jump from one vulnerability to another, to another, to another, and exploit a system. And you can't say like, well, that's like the chances of that happening are slim to none. Right?
Yeah, but Bryan, that's kind of like the same thing if you or I ever go do an assessment on a client systems, and then we find certain things like, hey, this firewall is outdated, or it's not patched, or you have this port open, or you're running this version of Windows which is not supported, and then the client answers, well, but what's the chances of it happening to me, or it'll never happen, or in order for this to happen, they'll need to go this way. And it's like they give all these excuses or reasons not to. They're in a denial in a sense, but I mean, for us, I think that happens as well, just on a different level.
Yep. Yeah. So the article goes on to say, according to this report done by Coveware in their quarterly ransomware report, the average ransom payment in the first 3 months of 2021 was up $220,298. So almost, let's call it $250,000, $250,000.
Yeah.
The average ransom payment this year is up 250. Is up. It was 250,000, up 43% from about 150,000.
Mm-hmm.
So they're coming. I mean, and look. This isn't in the millions. So this just goes to prove to you that these small companies are getting hit, and they're getting hit. It used to be, when ransomware first came out in 2007, it was like $500, $700 to get your files back. Right. Fast forward, 13, 14 years later to 2021, and you got 250,000, up from 150,000 last year. And like, these businesses that are only doing 500,000, 700,000, $1 million in revenue, these are the companies that are getting hit left and right. If you do $1 million a year in revenue, and you get hit with ransomware, your demand is probably going to be somewhere north of 75,000, like at a minimum, right? Mm-hmm. So it goes on to say Coveware does not list Phoenix Locker among the top 10 ransomware variants in 2021, a period dominated by Sodi no Kibi, which commands 14% of the market. Figures from crypto cybersecurity researcher Palo Alto Networks are even more attention getting, pegging the average ransom paid by North American and Europe at 312,000. So not, I mean, a little bit more, but not much more.
Right.
From 115,000. I mean, I believe it. I mean, I believe that these guys are being more successful. I believe that more companies are paying the ransom. More companies are willing to shell it out just to move on from business. And this is happening. It's not because there's less attacks happening at a higher rate. There's more attacks happening at a higher ransom demand than we've ever seen. And 2020 was a really bad year. And if you're on this side of the fence when it comes to cybersecurity, 2020 was a bad year, and 2021 is already starting off to be, worse than 2020, which to me is like, wow. While ransomware had previously caught federal government's interest, now it has captured its full attention. They're setting up all kinds of congressional committees, and they're putting bills out left and right. The Biden administration has signed an executive order. What do you think about that? Because I have my opinion, but what do you think about all the things that you see our government doing right now in response to how bad ransomware is getting?
Too little, too late.
Okay.
Yeah.
Too little, too late. I don't know if I just think I worked for the Navy as a defense contractor for the first 6 years of my career. I know how it works. Now in the Navy, their motto was, tongue in cheek, hurry up and wait. And that's pretty much, from what I've seen in the United States government, it's hurry up and wait. Like, they'll do things to make people feel good in the news, and they'll put, so this stuff gets in the headlines. And notice all of this happened right after the pipeline attack, right? Almost all this stuff that they talk about in this paragraph right here happened immediately after the pipeline attack, right? So not that it's the same thing, but liken this to when there's a mass shooting in this country, and then everybody for 2 or 3 weeks gets up in arms about gun control, and then nothing really ever changes around gun control. I happen to think that this is going to fall along the same lines. Yeah. That it's going to be, a lot of headlines to make people feel good, but at the end of the day, nobody's really going to put the blood, sweat, and tears in that's required to actually do this stuff and actually put a good cybersecurity program in for the country, for not only public entities, but private entities as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's it for this article. I'm going to move right along and switch my tab here. Give me 1 second. So the next one we're going to talk about is cyber attack, high risk stolen patient data may be released tomorrow. So this came out yesterday, and this is in regards to the healthcare hack that's going on in Ireland right now.
Right.
So what do you know about this? Where are we at? I don't know much about this, so I'm going to lean on you on this one. I haven't looked into this. There's been so much going on. This has been like kind of low on my radar. Although I do plan on getting caught up on some things with this today. What's going on here?
So essentially, like you mentioned, in Ireland, hospitals were attacked, and you have a government official saying that the hackers have the information, and now they're threatening. There's a very high chance that they're going to go ahead and release the information, release the patient data to the public and on the dark web, etc. So that's the first part of it. And then the second part of it is talking about the theft and the disclosure. And there's chances that if you get phone calls, for example, of anybody trying to contact you, because essentially the hackers now have your patient information. So we've seen many times where the hackers will now go and say, we have your data, and they'll actually try to trick the consumer into now getting information from them, either being a rep from a hospital, or we need to update your credit card information, or just saying we will release your information if you don't pay. So it's kind of like a double whammy that the hackers are getting.
Yeah, so I've read a couple articles on this while I was, busy last week. I did catch one on the plane, and I don't know if you have any intel on this or not, but one of the things I saw is that like actual like cancer patients and like treatment was being impacted by this. Like they couldn't deliver medical services, right?
Yeah.
So the other thing that I saw this weekend briefly when I was checking my phone at one point, I thought I read, and I think it says it right here, the cyber criminals did give them the encryption tool, the decryption tool. So, and because it's saying restoring systems, good progress is being made, restoring IT systems in the health service following the cyber attack, blah, blah, blah. And then steady progress was made over the weekend, and the provision of an encryption tool by the cyber criminals behind the attack has helped, he said. So what I believe is that they've given them the decryption tool for free. Because they basically said, we're not paying the ransom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we'll basically leave it to the Irish to go, we're going to just let people die. And, so be it. And we'll, basically figure it out on the back end. Obviously, you're probably talking about homicide charges at some point against people for stuff like this. And it sounds like they kind of took the burn the ships approach where we're like, okay, we're never even considering paying the ransom. And we're here to, fight this, by restoring and doing it the way that it should be done. Mm-hmm. And I guess they finally caved and gave the encryption tool or the decryption tool to the hospital so they could start recovering. So as it goes on to say, as a result, systems in some hospitals for storing scan results and patient administration details are likely to be restored soon. In other areas, restoration of systems will take weeks. And that's just the sheer amount of data that they probably encrypted, right? And how it spread through the network. Because like I tell people, if you get ransomware and you pay the ransom, there's a very good chance that the software is going to take a really long time to decrypt your stuff because it just takes a while. The other piece of it is that a lot of times we see with decryption that the tool doesn't work, or with the ransomware decryptor tool, the decryption doesn't work, or it doesn't work on all your files. So that becomes a problem, right? Because now you're paying for files to be restored and not all of them can be restored. And this happens in most of the ransomwares that I've observed. This happens 100% of the time where you don't get 100% of your files back.
Right.
So it just goes on to say that they're doing everything possible that they can. Definite constraint on the hospital system. And the high court order makes it a criminal offense to share information from the breach publicly, he pointed out. So they passed a law in Ireland that basically says if you share any information from this breach publicly, I guess basically if you're a worker, right? Because like, what do we see when companies get hacked here? Like people go to social media, they go to Twitter, they go to Reddit, and they kind of give a boots on the ground report of what's going on in their environment. We've seen that happen. So that plus also probably to protect the information of the people if the data was actually stolen by somebody, right? So they're working with social media platforms to ensure no material is published. If data is published, the HSE will contact the Data Protection Commissioner, he added.
Yeah,
so,
but that's just like trying to keep the honest people honest. Like, hey, if somehow you got a copy of an Excel spreadsheet or some type of document that had information from this, you're not allowed to publish it. But if you're honest, you're more likely not going to do it anyways. And if you're a criminal, you're not going to just post it, or you're going to trade it a different way than to make sure the police are not watching, or authorities are not watching.
Yeah, I'll give you one thing I can tell you right now when it comes to this stuff. My perspective is that when you're dealing with both sides of the fence here. So what I'm talking about is when you're dealing with the security people that own products, like I was mentioning earlier, when you disclose a vulnerability, and when you're dealing with hackers, the best approach a lot of times, in my opinion, is the long game, right? Because these two entities on both sides are you just break it down to a human aspect. These human beings are so used to, quick right now. They live in technology. When you start doing things like the Irish are doing, where they're playing the long game, where they're just like, okay, we're going to let this play out. We're not going to pay the ransom. We're going to put all these laws on the books that, are basically traps. If you step into this trap or that trap, it's going to be even worse for you. And if you read through this article, that's what's going on. They're literally setting things up for the long game, like, for what's going to come down the road after the investigation is completed and we figure out what actually happened. And I'm seeing that type of strategy being employed not only here, but I see it also with guys that I know that are in the threat research space, right? That look for vulnerabilities for companies in software and hardware. It's like I mentioned, they're going to these companies and trying to responsibly disclose things, only to be met with, well, we can't prove that right now in 2 seconds, right? And it's like, no, but if you look at the broad spectrum of what we've discovered and what we found, this is a very legit issue and vulnerability that needs to be addressed. Yes, there's a lot of different components involved, but it's still, at the end of the day, I can use your product or your service to hack a company or get information that I shouldn't have my hands on. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting to me that this is all playing out like this, where a lot of these issues that we're seeing are being handled with a very long-term type of strategy, instead of, hey, here's a problem, let's fix it right now and move on. These are all strategies that people are using to have a positive impact and move things forward, but you can see it's going to take a long time for it to play out.
Yeah, the American microwave culture is, CEO, a boardroom is saying, fix it now, make it go away, versus what you're saying. So
right, and that's what these cyber criminals prey on, is people who want the problem to go away right away.
Yeah. When
you start to deal with individuals who are like, okay, I'm willing to, play chicken with you as long as it takes, that disrupts things, right? And that causes these hackers to maybe rethink how they're doing things, because quite frankly, the longer they hang around, the more information the intelligence people can gather on them, right? The more contact they have, they know where they are, they know how they can reach them, the more things that they can do to try to identify who these people are.
Right.
So
let me ask you a question, Bryan.
Yeah.
So they got the encryptor, they got the tool to decrypt their information, but how confident are these guys where we're going to put a tool that the hacker is giving us on our systems to now couldn't that tool have something that they don't know, and maybe in 3 months, a year from now, hey, just all of a sudden something happened again, or it's monitoring, or
well, there's no tool. The reality of it is that the ransomware software itself is the tool. You just have to have the key to unlock the files, right? Okay. So they were given the key and the software is there, but your concern is valid. and I probably said it on this show, but I definitely said it on my channel. And I was quoted in Forbes a couple weeks ago saying the same thing. Any company that thinks that if they get attacked either with ransomware or any kind of malware, and there's two things to this. Number one, if you don't, or if you can't prove with 100% certainty that a certain system was not impacted or not touched by these hackers, then you're basically at a point where you need to go buy new equipment and put new equipment in, right? And restand everything back up, right? Because data, right? The data that you care about does not get the malware. It's either hardware or software that gets the malware. So those are the two things that you need to buy new of when you're setting up a new network. You got to get new hardware, and you have to install new software that you know is clean and wasn't exploited or compromised in any way, shape, or form. Then you can take backups and exports of your data and import them into, so let's say, as a for instance, let's say your Microsoft Outlook was compromised, right? And somebody was able to go into your Outlook, change the code, and they built a backdoor into your Microsoft Outlook that allowed them to get control of your computer whenever they wanted, right? So you're not going to take that machine and just, start using Outlook again because it's compromised. And you're not going to take that machine and, create a new user account or something like that and still use the same Outlook that was compromised. You're going to either wipe that machine if you can prove that Outlook was the only thing compromised. If you can't prove it, then you have to assume that other components of that system were also compromised, right? Because if you're a really smart hacker, you're putting more than one backdoor into the system so you can get back in.
Right.
So, if you can prove that the hardware wasn't touched or modified, you can use the same hardware. But if you can't, you're buying new computers, you're installing Outlook new, and then you're taking your Outlook data file and you're importing the data back into the new system and the new Outlook, right? That's how this works, to kind of break it down for you at a level that most people would probably understand, right? If you've ever dealt with Outlook, you know that it has this thing called a PST file. That's the database that stores all your emails, all your contacts, all your calendars. That's the data, right? That in itself cannot be compromised. So that data would then get imported back into your software, and that's how it works. So we got about 7 more minutes here. I do have to jump off at 1 o'clock, but let's jump into this California, I guess, gem you found, I would call it. This article is interesting because, as you told me, it goes into a little bit about Scripps Health, and I guess that's what prompted this guy to kind of take a look at things again. But what is it? The NBC7 out in California and San Diego, they decided to go, hey, we did an investigation. It was 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2019. Yep.
Yeah, so they did an investigation in 2019, and then they were basically, I guess, what did they say then? What did they say in 2019?
Well, in 2019, when they had the incident, they talked about it, et cetera. And now they're doing a follow-up to the 10 or so cities in the San Diego County to say, it's been 2 years from now. It's been 2 years. What has changed? What have you done as far as improving your cybersecurity for your government entity? And then Now they're going city by city to give what the response was.
Right. So somebody at the news station was like, okay, Scripps Health got hit, which was the repercussions of that hasn't come out yet. Like that was another big attack. You're talking about a healthcare company with a lot of patient information. So they get hit. So this investigator, Alex Rivas, goes, well, Scripps got hit, but I remember doing a story like this 2 years ago with all these other city governments that were getting hit left and right. Mm-hmm. So they asked several cities across San Diego County: Carlsbad, Chula Vista, El Cajon, Encinitas, National City, Oceanside, Santee, San Diego, San Marcos, and Vista. Now, I'm sure they asked a lot of them. 10 cities replied, right? And basically summarize for our audience, Andre, what this article kind of details about the cybersecurity posture of their cities now versus where they were in 2019.
Yeah, so there's two things that's interesting with limited time. I know we got about 4 minutes left, but the city of Carlsbad, they're stating that they get an average of 35,000 attempts a month from some kind of cyber attack. That is a lot. That is a lot. And then there was another city, which, Bryan, if you want to hover down over to San Marcos, which I actually have a problem with this. I'm glad that they responded. However, look at that last paragraph where it says, for remote access security, the city has implemented Horizon and Dual platforms. And then it also goes down to say the city also deployed Carbon Black and Red Canary. And the problem I have is they just told the whole world some of the tools that they're using to protect themselves.
Yeah, that's a bad idea. I mean, I guess you want to boast a little bit because you actually did something. But am I wrong? And I kind of breezed through this in the green room before we went live. Other than San Marcos revealing kind of who they work with, and why that's important, and why Andre said this, and I agree with him. Now, as an attacker, if you go after Carbon Black or Red Canary, you're going to get San Marcos, right? If you can breach those companies, right? So now those companies become bigger targets because guess what? They're not just working with San Marcos.
Exactly. Right? Just like FireEye, on their website, they listed all of the agencies and they became a target.
Right. So, but I don't know. Generally speaking, as you go through all these cities, is it fair for me to say that not much has changed?
Yeah, they didn't. Some of them kept tight lip, and then others basically, hey, we have a incident response plan that we're using if there's a during an emergency, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I agree with you on that.
So not much has changed, and cyber attacks are up. That's kind of like where we've been today, where the money's up. The amount of money you're paying is up. And with these city governments, not much has changed. And quite frankly, in private business, not much has changed either. If you're listening to this and you own a business, you probably haven't done much in the last 2 years when it comes to cybersecurity. Some businesses have, but many have not. There's still a lot of companies that need to start and take cybersecurity more seriously, which means they have to invest more in what they're doing. And then this Verizon data breach report, couple interesting stats we're going to close with here. Verizon found that 85% of breaches involve a human element, which threat actors prefer by a 24% margin over breaches involving credentials, right? So this is basically saying that human beings are the reason ransomware happens. Yep. And that's it. And that's the bottom line. Is there anything else in here that we want to kind of highlight before we wrap up the show?
Just some statistics. They were talking. I'm actually happy to see some of these statistics. So the reason I'm happy is because going back to the human aspect, one of the jokes that I tell my clients is it's not that the computer is made bad or the program is made bad. It's just the employee is not paying attention or they're tricked into doing something. So that actually is just the best one that I like and that I'll be, sharing with our clients is we're here to make sure that those people over there and you, the CEO, don't do something that's going to now cause this attack.
Right. And it's like I was talking to somebody Saturday, and they work for a big hospital system, and they were asking me a question about the because of the pipeline hack, right? And I just asked them a simple question. I said, "Hey," he's like, what do they do? And I said, well, what they do is they usually send somebody on your staff an email or some kind of link that they shouldn't click on, and they are able to then get control of the system and deploy ransomware. And I was like, I'm hoping you guys do some kind of like security awareness training or something like that. And he's like, yeah, we do something. It's like once a year. And that's like the worst kind of cybersecurity training you can put out there, right? So there's better cybersecurity programs. You literally, if you're running a company, and we're going to end with this, if you're running a company and you are concerned about getting ransomware, if you are putting something in front of your employees on a weekly basis that's training them and teaching them what to look out for and what they should do, you are setting yourself up to get ransomware. And that's the bottom line. Your employees don't want to be the cause of ransomware, but you're not equipping them with the tools and the resources and the knowledge so they can protect your company. And if you are not the person making sure that something is in your company besides a once a year, a once a month, a once a quarter type training, literally there are platforms out there where you can deploy quick and easy training videos with quizzes. You can track who's taking it. They get delivered to the mailbox or your inbox on a weekly basis, and it's top of mind. And that's the right way to build a culture of cybersecurity in your business. So anything you want to add to that before I hit end?
And last thing on this article is talking about how social media engineering, and essentially if it knows you have an accountant, a CPA, somebody that's working at your firm, and they like, Cleveland Browns football. So what they're going to specifically do now is send an email to that person about Cleveland Browns football, a survey, or hey, get free tickets or get discounted tickets, memorabilia, or whatever the case is. And that's how they're going to specifically target that person in order to, so they're using social media to get your employees as well.
Oh, absolutely. Google alerts. They're sending you emails that look like they're Google Drive files, and people don't think that they can get phished or tricked into ransomware through Google Drive, but it absolutely happens a lot. There's a lot of different ways that this stuff can go down. I've seen ransomware links come in through website forms, right? Like, who would think somebody would go to my website, fill out a form, send me a link, and because you're getting that from your website, a lot of times you might let your guard down and not realize that the link this person just sent me from our website is a link that's going to get malware on my system and give us ransomware. Mm-hmm. But it happens all the time, folks. So that's it for me.
All right,
brother. Thanks for your time. We will see you all. We're going to record again on Thursday, so we'll see you then. Please remember to share out our show on your social media, and wherever you like us, take 15 to 90 seconds to review our podcast, and hopefully you'll give us 5 stars on whatever podcasting platform you download us on. So hope everyone has a good day. We'll see you soon. Take care.